Don't forget to like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to stay updated with our latest stories. I never expected that an ordinary dinner would turn my entire world upside down. That evening, I had everything planned to perfection. My husband, David, had invited his best friend, Mark, over for dinner, and I had gone out of my way to make sure everything was just right. Mark had been in David's life since their college days, and though we'd shared countless meals together over the years, something about this night felt different. I just didn't know why. The table was set beautifully. White linen, candlelight flickering softly, casting golden reflections against the wine glasses. The aroma of roasted chicken and rosemary filled the air, a comforting scent that reminded me of cozy family gatherings. I adjusted the flowers in the centerpiece and took a deep breath, smoothing down my dress as I heard the sound of their laughter approaching from the living room. Mark had always been easygoing, the kind of man who could make anyone feel comfortable. But tonight there was something else in his eyes, something deeper, a hesitation. As we sat down, the conversation flowed effortlessly at first. Stories from their college years, inside jokes I had heard 100 times but still laughed at. David poured the wine, and we toasted to friendship, to old memories, to the years we had all spent together. Then, somewhere between the second glass of wine and the first bite of dessert, Mark's expression shifted. His fingers traced the rim of his glass, his eyes flickering between me and David, as if he were weighing something heavy on his mind. "I need to tell you both something," he said, his voice quieter than before. I felt a slight chill, despite the warmth of the room. David, oblivious, leaned back in his chair, raising a curious eyebrow. "Come on, Mark. Don't get all dramatic on us," David chuckled. But Mark wasn't laughing. His fingers tapped against the table, and then he exhaled sharply, looking straight at me. "This is about you, Anna." My stomach tightened. "Me?" I repeated, trying to keep my voice steady. Mark nodded. He glanced at David briefly before turning his full attention back to me. I should have said this a long time ago, but I never found the right moment. And now, I don't think I can keep quiet anymore. David let out a short laugh, shaking his head. "Mark, what are you talking about?" Mark swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing. He leaned forward, his voice barely above a whisper. "I've been in love with Anna for years." The air left the room in an instant. David froze. I froze. The sounds of the clock ticking in the background suddenly seemed deafening. I could feel my heartbeat pounding in my ears, my fingers tightening around my fork. My mind struggled to process the words that had just been spoken, words that felt so out of place at our dinner table, yet hung in the air like an undeniable truth. David was the first to react. He let out a short, disbelieving chuckle, shaking his head. "All right, Mark, you've had a little too much wine. Let's—" "I'm serious," Mark interrupted, his voice firm. "I'm not saying this to cause trouble. I've buried it for years, for the sake of our friendship, for the sake of your marriage. But I can't pretend anymore." I felt dizzy. My hands trembled slightly as I set down my glass, my mind racing back through the years. Mark had always been there. Birthdays, holidays, casual dinners. He had always been kind, always thoughtful. But I had never once suspected this. David's jaw tightened. He stood up so suddenly that his chair scraped against the floor. "This is insane," he muttered. "Why are you telling us this now?" Mark met his gaze, unwavering. "Because I thought I could live with it. But I can't." He turned to me, his expression raw, vulnerable. "Anna, I don't expect anything from you. I know you love David. I would never try to come between you two. But I needed to tell you the truth, at least once in my life." I felt David's eyes on me, waiting for my reaction. But what was I supposed to say? Part of me wanted to dismiss it, to laugh it off and pretend it never happened. Another part of me, well, I wasn't sure. A deep, unspoken tension filled the air, a tension I wasn't prepared to face. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to find my voice. "Mark." I hesitated, choosing my words carefully. I don't know what to say. Mark nodded, as if he had expected that answer. He looked down at his hands, exhaling slowly. I'm sorry, he said softly. I just couldn't keep it in any more. David's fists clenched at his sides, his breathing heavier now. You had no right, he muttered. No right to come here and... I'm not trying to take her from you, David, Mark interrupted. I just wanted her to know. Silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. I felt my heart pounding against my ribs. My mind raced with 1,000 thoughts, emotions I wasn't ready to confront. I looked at my husband, then at Mark, the man who had just changed everything with a few simple words. The night had started with laughter, with warmth. But now, sitting there in the dim candlelight, I realized nothing would ever be the same again. The silence between us stretched on for what felt like an eternity. My hands were clammy, and the room seemed to close in around me. I didn't know where to look. At Mark, whose confession had left me reeling, or at David, whose face was now flushed with anger. But then my eyes landed on the table, the uneaten food, the half-empty glasses of wine. Everything had seemed so normal just a few moments ago. Now it felt like the whole world had shifted beneath me. David's voice broke through the stillness, sharp and filled with an edge I had never heard before. I think you should go, Mark. Mark's face crumpled, a mix of regret and guilt flashing across his features. He opened his mouth to say something but seemed to think better of it. Instead, he stood up slowly, his chair scraping against the floor in the silence that followed. I remained frozen in place, unsure of what to do, how to react. Mark had always been there, a steady presence in our lives. How could he have kept this from me? Why now, of all times? I'm sorry, Anna, Mark whispered, his voice filled with an emotion I couldn't quite name. I never wanted to hurt you. The words were sincere, but they still didn't make sense. How could he have loved me for all these years and said nothing? How could he have been carrying this weight, and I never knew? David didn't respond. He simply turned away, pacing across the room, his hands running through his hair in frustration. I stood up slowly, the tension in the air almost unbearable. David, I said softly, but he didn't turn to look at me. I crossed the room to him, my heart heavy with confusion. David, I repeated, this time more urgently, my voice trembling. Please, talk to me. He turned to face me then, his expression conflicted. You don't get it, Anna. This isn't just about Mark. This is about trust. About everything we've built. I shook my head, feeling my chest tighten. I never asked him for this, David. I didn't know. I don't care if you didn't know. He cut me off, his voice rising. The fact is, he's been holding on to this for years. And now he's dropped it on us like some bombshell, and you're telling me it doesn't matter. I didn't say it didn't matter, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. But it's not about us, David. It's about him. His feelings. I can't change what he feels, but that doesn't mean I feel the same way. David's face softened, but only slightly. You're not seeing it, Anna. This whole thing changes everything. How can I trust him again? How can I trust you? The words stung more than I cared to admit. I understood why he was angry, but I also felt this sharp pang of betrayal. I had been loyal to David for so many years, and yet now it felt like everything was being questioned. Mark walked toward the door, his steps slow and heavy, as if each one weighed him down. I'll go, he said quietly, his back to us. I didn't want him to leave like this, not with the tension still hanging between us, unresolved. Mark, wait, I called out, taking a step forward. He paused, his hand on the door handle. His eyes met mine, and for the first time, I saw vulnerability in them. I'm sorry, Anna. I really am. Before I could respond, he was gone, the door closing softly behind him. The room felt eerily empty in his absence, and I turned to face David. The anger in his eyes had faded, replaced by something darker, hurt. You didn't tell me, Anna. You didn't tell me about how you felt about him. My heart sank. I didn't feel anything, David. Not like that." "But how can you be so sure?" he pressed, his voice softening. "How can you be so sure that you never felt something for him?" I hesitated, because I didn't. The words hung in the air between us, fragile, unsure. It felt like I was trying to convince both him and myself. David studied me carefully, his expression unreadable, before he let out a deep sigh. "Maybe I just need some time to process all of this," he murmured, running a hand over his face. "I don't know what to think right now." "I understand," I whispered. I need time too." He nodded, his eyes distant, before turning away and walking to the window. The soft glow of the streetlights outside cast shadows across his face. I felt this chasm opening up between us, as if something inside him had shifted, and perhaps something inside me too. For the rest of the night we hardly spoke. David retreated into the silence of his thoughts, while I sat at the table, my mind a whirlwind of confusion and emotions. I had never seen him so closed off, so distant. It felt like he was a stranger to me, and yet I couldn't shake the feeling that he was just as lost as I was. The dinner that had begun with laughter and easy conversation now seemed like a distant memory. All the warmth, all the connection, had vanished in the wake of Mark's revelation. The night stretched on in silence, the only sound the ticking of the clock in the corner. Time seemed to move differently now, slower, heavier. And as I sat there, in the quiet of our home, I wondered if we would ever be able to return to the life we had before. The days that followed were filled with an eerie, unspoken tension. David and I barely spoke, and when we did, it felt like we were walking on eggshells. Mark's confession lingered between us like a heavy fog, clouding every conversation, every moment. I kept replaying that night over and over in my head. Mark's words, the look on David's face, the way the air had thickened, as if it knew something neither of us was ready to face. The morning after Mark left, I had tried to talk to David, to make sense of it all, but he had shut down. I couldn't blame him. I wasn't sure how I felt either. But the silence, the distance that now defined our home, it was unbearable. There were days when I would catch him staring out the window, his mind far away, and I would wonder what he was thinking, what he was feeling. I couldn't help but feel guilty. I hadn't encouraged Mark. I had never once thought of him in that way. But the weight of his revelation had settled deep in my chest. Why hadn't I seen the signs before? How could someone hide such deep feelings for so long? And why did it feel like a betrayal of David, even though I hadn't done anything wrong? One evening, a week after the dinner, I sat alone in the living room, the soft glow of the lamp casting shadows on the walls. The house felt empty without the usual sounds, laughter, conversation, the hum of life. David was at work, and I had spent the day trying to make sense of the mess we were in. There had been no clear answers, just a lot of wondering, of thinking about things that I had never had to think about before. Just as I was lost in my thoughts, the doorbell rang, startling me out of my reverie. I stood up, my heart racing for reasons I didn't fully understand, and opened the door to find Mark standing there, his face filled with uncertainty. "Mark?" I breathed, surprised by his sudden appearance. "What are you doing here?" "I needed to talk to you," he said softly, his hands stuffed in his pockets. "I know I shouldn't have come, but I couldn't just leave things the way they are." I stepped aside, allowing him in. "You shouldn't have come here, Mark." "David." I stopped myself, unsure of what I was trying to say. Mark was already inside, his eyes scanning the room like he was unsure of where to sit, what to do. I know, he said quietly, almost apologetically. I couldn't leave without seeing you one last time. I've been thinking a lot about everything, and I realize I've made a huge mess of things. But I need to apologize, Anna. I owe you that much." I was silent for a moment, trying to understand his words. The tension between us felt so thick, I could almost touch it. "Mark, why did you tell me? Why did you have to say it that night?" Mark exhaled slowly, his gaze lowering to the floor. "Because I couldn't keep it inside anymore. I thought it was something I could bury. But the truth is, I've been carrying it for so long. And when I saw you that night, I couldn't pretend it didn't matter." He looked up at me then, his eyes filled with regret. "I was selfish, Anna. I should have never said anything. I didn't want to cause pain, but I guess that's exactly what I've done." His words hit me harder than I expected. There was so much vulnerability in his voice, so much rawness. It wasn't the confession that shocked me now. It was the depth of the regret behind it, the realization that he had been wrestling with this for years. I took a deep breath. "Mark, you didn't have to carry that weight on your own. But you're right. You should have kept it to yourself. You've put David and me in a very difficult position." "I know," he whispered. "And I'm sorry. I didn't mean to destroy anything." I could see the sincerity in his eyes, the pain of knowing what he had caused. But I also knew that I couldn't keep carrying this emotional burden either. Not for him. Not for anyone. "David's hurt," I said softly, my voice shaking just a little. "And I'm hurt too. But we need time, Mark. I can't fix this for either of us. We both need space to figure out how to move forward." Mark nodded, the weight of my words settling in between us. "I understand. I didn't come here to fix things. I came to apologize. And to give you the space you need." We stood there for a moment, the quiet heavy between us. Finally, he took a step back, nodding. "I'll go now. I just wanted to make sure you knew how sorry I am." I watched him leave, and as the door clicked shut behind him, I felt a strange sense of relief. It wasn't over, not by a long shot, but maybe it was the first step toward healing. Later that evening, David came home. He was tired, his face drawn with exhaustion, but he paused when he saw me sitting on the couch, staring into the distance. He didn't ask about Mark. He didn't need to. The unspoken words between us were enough. Instead, he sat down beside me, his presence warm and solid. "I don't know what to say, Anna," he said quietly, his voice softer than before. "You don't have to say anything," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. "We just need time." David reached for my hand, his grip gentle but firm. For the first time in a long time, I felt like we were on the same page again, even though things were far from resolved. But maybe that was okay. Maybe we didn't need all the answers right now. Maybe we just needed to figure it out together, one step at a time. As the days went by, the tension slowly began to lift. David and I spent more time together, talking, reconnecting, learning how to move forward from the shock of Mark's confession. We were still healing, still finding our way, but there was hope now. A small, fragile hope that we could overcome this. And maybe, just maybe, the truth had set us on a new path, one that would lead us to a deeper understanding of each other, of trust, and of what it truly meant to love.